here. I hate to break up your friendly conversation. First, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I'm going to recognize Commissioner Matheson for some comments.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I would like to ask if we could take a moment of silence tonight for the passing of two of Boiling Rock's finest in the past month. Just a little over a month ago, we lost Officer Tim Hunt, and Monday morning we lost fellow firefighter Travis Grider. And services for firefighter Grider will be Wednesday at 5 o'clock, receiving friends, and services will be Thursday at 1 o'clock. All this to be held at First Presbyterian out on Deerfield Road in Boone. So I'd like to ask that we please take a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's hope that that's it for a while.
Thank you, Doug. I ask that you keep thoughts and prayers for that family. And the town of Boiling Rock has suffered more tragedy in the last 5 years than any town this size or even a larger town should have to suffer. So please keep that family in your prayers. Okay, approval of the minutes, April 14th, 2015, regular meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. Motion carries. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Kip, ready for an update here?
It's good to be with you this evening. Much quieter evening after yesterday's frog
Yes,
strangler
it was a little
yesterday evening, so
interesting.
we've been cleaning up today. Just to give you a few updates, I'll start out with the 18-inch sewer that we've been working on for quite a while, but they actually set the last manhole today. And that is the one just below the Hess station at the entrance to the treatment plant. And should have the sewer completely tied in by Thursday. So they'll get that manhole backfilled tomorrow and get those barrels out of the travel lane and get that new line active. So looking forward to that. Something upcoming that I'll mention kind of in the same area, there is some sewer work along Cliff Dwellers Drive. There's an existing sewer line along the outside edge of the road that is right in the same location as where the new guardrail is supposed to go. So at some point here in the near future, we'll be relaying that sewer line, relocating that out into the roadway, so we'll have a place to put guardrail posts. So we'll make sure we communicate with the town once that happens, and work to keep traffic flowing, but we may just have it down to one lane when we do that work. So just wanted to mention that. Also an update on and I don't have the details, but the DOT a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week and a half ago, worked on the signal synchronization between the two traffic signals at Tanger and the new 321 business intersection, and put in some new timing plans there to try to get those to work together better. Other than that, I don't really have the details as to what they changed in the internal mechanisms of those traffic signals. The Rock Masons have just finished up the end of last week on Wall 19, and that is the wall across from the golf course. And they spent the last day to 2 days cleaning up through there, so it's looking much nicer in front of that wall. And they'll continue to work on some of the grade work in front of that wall now that we've got the masons out of the way and getting some of that remnants of their work cleaned up. I should also mention that along that wall, we are going to have to relocate a 12-inch water line. The water line is now on the golf course side of the road, but it is in conflict with the retaining walls that are to be built both in front of the Fairway condos and the wall that goes along the golf course before you get to the Green Park Inn. So that work will be coming up in the near future also. It's quite a bit of water line relocation work, but it's needed, and it'll replace part of the line that you have there now. The fine grading and the paving has progressed pretty good. We've got our 2 layers of black base down all the way to Food Line, with the exception of some of the intersection tie-ins, and they've been working on that over the past week. So I'm hoping to see our paving crew be back in here next week and start getting some of these tie-ins made also at the intersections. With that said, the curb and gutter guys, that crew's moving back in Thursday. They'll be here for quite a while. Should see a lot of curb and gutter being placed on the outside edge of pavement on that right-hand side, as well as some areas you won't see, but there's a lot of concrete ditches that goes at the top and behind these walls that are already built. So they'll be working on a lot of that also while they're here. I mentioned last time just briefly about coordinating some of the driveways as we start looking to shift traffic over there, and have reviewed those with DOT, and I think one of the DOT personnel have visited, or in the process of visiting, most of the businesses just to discuss the driveway accesses and how we'll need to cut across some of those and maybe give them an access out a different way while we're doing that utility duct bank work through those areas. So I believe they've been communicating with the businesses there to give them a heads up on that work. The excavation for the large walls down at the Chatola Dam, they're 95% complete on that. DOT came back, there was some substandard soils in there, so we've had to undercut and take additional soils out to get to the adequate bearing capacity, so they're still working on that. But the crew that's putting in the wire baskets and everything that'll start showing an upward movement of that wall, those materials were moved in Monday, and we're looking for them to get started either Thursday or Friday down there also. So you'll start seeing these funny looking wire baskets going in, for a lack of a better way to say it, that's the structural part of that wall. They've also been working to complete the majority of the work at Canyons. They've put in the remaining panels. That's the retaining wall that was the precast panels, and should complete the gravel and the dirt placement behind that wall tomorrow. Then also, if you've been out South Main Street, you've noticed where they've been excavating across from the Broyhill showroom area. That is another large retaining wall that's going to be installed below the parking lot for those condominiums. And then this week, we also did resume the duct bank work, and that's what's going on at Sunset Drive, where the concrete barrier has been placed, and they're excavating behind that wall because of that elevation change, and we knew we needed to go ahead and get that concrete conduit system through that intersection before we actually turn traffic. So they've gotten started on that yesterday, and already making some pretty good progress.
Is that the last duct bank on that side of the road?
No,
Or, well, is it to that intersection?
no, it is not. It's actually just below Ransom Street. They'll have to start at Ransom Street and tie it all the way down to where we're starting here, but we cannot do that work till we switch traffic to the right-hand side.
Is that the only duct bank on that side of the road that has not been completed?
No, and what's happening is there's extra width there, and where they're laying that is actually right down the middle of where the new road will go. And everywhere they'll put that duct bank up through there is the middle of where the new road is going to be. So there's still a lot of that work to do, but we can't do it till we shift traffic. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin.
Any other questions?
What did you find out on my question? I never did hear back from you. I heard that you had passed it on to them.
About the traffic? Yeah, I believe, Scott, they sent an email to both of us, and it just said that the left turn phase was working according to plan, was the answer I got, and we got that back last week.
Moving the lane up and doing away with the right turn lane there at Cliff Dwellers, and opening that up to where maybe we could use the left turn lane or the right turn lane coming back into town.
Was that in the permanent phase or one of the temporary
Just a
phases?
temporary phase to try and help traffic speed through there just a little bit better. You know, we have that, it's a dedicated lane, you know, when you pull up toward Cliff Dwellers, there's a dedicated lane to the right turn. You know, we had said, you had told us that the lanes were too close right there to do a right, no turn, the reason they had to do a no turn on red. And I'd mentioned about shifting the lane up and doing away with that dedicated lane for right now temporarily until, until y'all are ready to move to that side and maybe we can get something open.
A dedicated lane out on 321 or 321 business?
No, it's on Main Street. As you're
On
coming
Main
up to the
Street.
lights, you got a dedicated right turn lane
Right.
right there back toward Food Line.
Right.
We had talked about shifting the lane up, doing away with that lane, and letting the traffic come up to that side, which would leave more room for them to turn. You said that the reason that they had a no turn on red was that when they made a left turn toward Boone and somebody was wanting to try and make a right turn, that they were coming too close together.
I think if I'm following with what you're saying, and I think Doug Eller from the DOT might have answered that when we met the other week, and I think there was concern about sight distance also, looking back to the left for the concrete barrier there. And I know he did run that through the traffic signals unit in the Raleigh design unit. But I can find out some more details as to why that was. But I know he did run it through them, and they came back with a number of reasons as to why that was not the
I
safe
got
thing to do.
that one letter that you sent Scott saying that about the signal light synchronization, and that you had passed that information on to Doug
Yeah.
Eller of mine. So.
Yeah, and they did check into any lane configuration there too. But I'll make sure that I'll get a detailed response back through Scott. There's probably one already out there that we can just forward, make sure it gets to you. Anything else?
Kip, how many Made-Meat employees are designated for this job?
How many are designated?
Yes.
It's up to what time you're talking about. There's times where I'm the only one here because the majority of the work may be done by subcontractors, but yet we have a lot of the stone work and a lot of the paving work. So it's just simply up to what activities are going on.
So basically, you're the supervisor to bring in the subcontractors and so forth?
I'm the project manager.
Okay, so you have the flexibility to pull in whatever resources you need to get accomplished what you need to get accomplished?
Within the framework of our subcontractors, yes.
Within the framework of your subcontractors, okay?
Yeah, they are subcontracted out to do portions of work. So once they're designated to do that work, that is their responsibility to do the certain scopes of work that they're subcontracted out for.
Who is the contractor that actually does the labor? Okay, I see the guys in the white trucks. Who are they with the little yellow lights? Who are they?
Well, there's actually a number of subcontractors. Vasilio and Grogan is a major player on the job as far as the grade work and the wall work. Haynes Electric is doing the underground duct bank work and the signalization work. Stillwell Enterprises is doing the utility work.
Do all of them have the little yellow lights on top of their trucks? There's one
I
in particular that
don't
runs
know.
around that has those on it.
I don't know. A lot of the Vasilio and Grogan trucks have the flashers on their trucks. But, yeah, I mean, there's a whole list of subcontractors that are in and out of this job according to what the need is.
So you have a fair amount of flexibility of pulling in who you need to pull in and the quantity of people and subs that you need at any given time.
Yeah, if it's the appropriate thing to do, yes.
Okay. When I got back from my break and y'all had done the resequences of lights, one of the things I noticed coming up 321 toward Boone and stopping at Sunset, the length of the backup at Sunset was far greater going back toward Food Line. So if you were wanting to turn left to come up at Sunset,
Opposite side of town, instead of turning left to come in town, to turn left to go up.
turn left to come into town.
Oh, okay.
At Sunset, you're pretty much at the mercy of whatever length of traffic that is since the resequencing. And I had mentioned to Scott, and he sent an email out requesting that they be given consideration for a left turn signal. Okay? I kind of see that instead of getting into all the engineering logistics as potentially a customer service issue for everybody involved to go dust off a left turn signal, spend the 2 hours to put it up there and help us all so that we can turn and come up and down. Because if the resequencing is helping out there, I don't know, is it Doug? Is the resequencing going out?
It's some, yeah.
Some, okay. You know, we're all going through different phases of how we're handling this situation. To me, looking at that aspect of things, and I don't know what your power in this process is. Maybe you're just the intermediary, but if you can carry the message and let those folks know that we feel and look at that, as I said, as potentially a customer service and safety issue, that letting 4 or 5 cars turn left to come up toward town wouldn't be a bad thing to happen.
Yeah, I can relay that message. That's
Would you
a
please?
decision for DOT. I do know the request was passed to DOT sometimes towards, I don't know, the middle or end of last week, if I remember right. But I can follow back up on that.
Okay.
Be glad to.
Thank you.
Anything else?
If, FYI, this board started asking that question 8 years ago of DOT. I can tell you that.
Okay.
I know that. And we've not gotten anything done in 8 years. And it's a little more than a 2-hour job, Dan.
Well, let them spend 10 doing it.
If there's any encouragement in the final pattern, there will be a dedicated left turn. So it will be coming, but we can surely ask about the temporary phase again.
Thanks, Ken.
My question is, we'd asked for a timeline. I wonder about where that is, that we can expect to get that timeline, a more detailed of when it's gonna happen.
I believe the DOT's website currently says 2016, if I remember right. Now, they're in the process of evaluating a number of the delays that we've discussed in the past about the design issues with the duct bank systems, the additional work for some of the sewer work. So I really need them to tell us what they've determined from the information that we've given them as far as setting that set deadline. But until they do that, I think we're pretty much kind of saying, hey, 2016 seems to be the reasonable time frame, and I would say summer of 2016. With that said, we're still looking to, by the end of this year, to have traffic completely on the right-hand side, to have the 321 business intersection completed, to be working in phases from, say, Sunset Drive up towards Ransom Street, to go ahead and try to get even the curb and gutter on those sections so that it will at least start looking like its final 4-lane pattern also, even though traffic may not be able to utilize all those lanes because we'll still need to be doing some work in the median. So we've kind of got some intermediate milestones that we're looking at for this year, but probably the best general answer that I could give until DOT can finalize that specific date would be summer of 2016.
Okay, and speaking of the delays, some of them were other companies, not the subcontractors, but companies you were depending on to come in and do.
No, it was really design issues more than anything. Just a number of, I don't want to get real detailed here, but there's been some changes with some of the walls. There were some changes with primarily the duct bank system, where it had to be relocated to a whole new area of the road down the middle, whereas it was going to be on the right-hand side. It would have been out of traffic, but they realized it was in conflict with a number of storm drainage issues. There's been a few other delays from the utility companies. Some of the additional sewer work and some of those things that were not anticipated in the original plan kind of throws off the way the project was going to be phased, since some of that work needed to be done before we could have started those walls. And for example, the sewer work down at 321 Business at the Chatola Dam, had we not been replacing that 18-inch sewer, those walls would have already been up. We would have had those up. I'm pretty confident to say those would have been up last year, but we could not do that until that sewer work was in. So those are just some examples, and those are the type things that through DOT specifications, you kind of just document and lay out those things for them to consider, and then they adjust the contract dates accordingly.
There was one in particular they mentioned at our meeting that we had that seemed to me they mentioned one utility company in particular that was not getting their stuff moved in an appropriate time. Has that been
Yes.
fixed?
I can say as of today, we are caught up.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, that has improved over the last, I'd say, 6 weeks or so.
Good. So
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Kip, how's the
Yeah.
project coming outside of town, south of town? Is that moving pretty good?
As far as in the curve below Green Park Inn, if you've noticed, they've been doing a lot of drainage work. There was a lot of pipe work coming across the road as well as parallel to the road. The cut down at the Blackberry condos, they pretty much have that down to grade to where really all that's left is the fine grading. As soon as he gets some of this other drainage wrapped up and they get some of the balancing of grade in front of that Wall 19, they're looking at starting to really go further down the mountain. There's a lot of drainage work that still needs to be accomplished down there, as well as wall work. So we're fully expecting some wall work and some drainage work to begin down there pretty soon. We really have concentrated a lot of our efforts in the town area, just trying to facilitate some progress up here while the weather's good. And we've had pretty good weather all in all the last few
Had a good
weeks. So,
stretch there for a while.
yeah, it's helped us.
I
Any-
want to clear up one thing to you. I don't allege that the turn signal that Dan's talking about, which is a good idea, is within your scope of work. I don't think it is. It's within DOT.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to pass that along.
We have paid
So-
a ton of money for aluminum poles and hangers for that intersection. And if you can do anything to help us, go to it.
I'll be glad to ask again. And I did mention it last week, and we'll follow up in detail.
I understand you have some easement problems there around near canyons for wastewater, do you not?
I'm not familiar, nothing rings a bell as far as at canyons for
Down-
wastewater.
There's condos across the road.
The on the other side of the road, at the Fairway condos. Yeah, that property was actually in condemnation, and that simply just means that the owners and the DOT have not settled, so there's still negotiations with the Attorney General's office. But there has been a plan revision that I believe all parties have agreed to with regards to their driveway and that retaining wall, and that will in turn allow us to accomplish the outlet of the stormwater system through that area. So the last I checked on that, they are working pretty close to an end
Okay, well,
to the work there. Yep. Anything else?
Thank you, Kip. See
All
you
right.
next month.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Pray for good weather. Sorry, Scott. Next item's consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council. We have 4 items on your consent agenda this evening. The first is a resolution agreement regarding collection of occupancy taxes from online travel companies, and this is a resolution being put before all of the municipalities in Watauga County as well as Watauga County itself, so that after April 20th, 2015, occupancy taxes from bookings made through online travel companies can make their way back to Watauga County and be distributed accordingly. Second item is recognition of additional donations for the American Legion Building Renovation Project and appropriating those to the project. We've got a couple final items as we round the bend here on looking to close out that project in the next several weeks. Third item is painting the old fire rescue building to both help protect the exterior and improve the appearance of that building on the corner of Park and Wallingford. And then our fourth item is a budget ordinance amendment, 2 of them to account for various items in previous council meetings as well as items reflected on this agenda. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about the consent agenda items.
I have one. What's the total contributions for the American Legion building?
We have 3 primary funding sources. One is the town of Blowing Rock, and then we have received a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. That was for $142,500, and then our donations totaled $148,343, and that includes the donations on this particular consent agenda item.
And I'd just like to thank the Historical Society, sort of took the charge with Jenny Stevens. Thank you.
I was forced by somebody.
I know, we do that.
I remember that.
But, I mean, that's pretty incredible, 148,000 from the community. So I think we all need to pat ourselves on the back, 'cause that was quite commendable.
I even think Councilman Young.
Now, a special thank you to Mr. Yont for his contribution for the kitchen, generous contribution. Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Make sure there's a coffee pot in there for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Goldfish.
and goldfish dispenser.
Yeah, goldfish.
I'll pay for that.
I seen one online special.
How about two of them, one for the house?
Yeah, that. Okay, do I hear a motion for approval?
I make a motion to be approved.
Second.
Motion and second, further discussion? None, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. Motion carries. Thank
And
you.
just a quick programming note, Albert has been very involved in the design and elements of that kitchen, not only the donations, but his time and effort has been well spent in working with Jennifer, so he's been a really big help for us on that aspect of it.
Okay. Public hearings, conditional rezoning from single family to general business. Kevin? I got one. We had, we had.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our first conditional rezoning request since we adopted it last year. And the applicant is Wes and Angela Carter. They're requesting a conditional rezoning of their property from R15, single family, to CZGB, conditional zoning, general business. The .22 acre property is located at 114 Skyline View Drive and was formerly the Blowing Rock Church of God. Mr. and Mrs. Carter are proposing to restrict the uses of the building to 1, each single family, 2, home occupations related to that single family, and the third would be office with associated sales. If approved, the only uses allowed are those that are specifically included in the conditional rezoning approval. The site, landscape, utility plans, and building plans submitted for the rezoning, if approved, become part of the rezoning ordinance. Any substantial changes to the plan shall follow the procedures for review and approval specified by Section 16, 9.6 of the Land Use Code, which either requires the planning board and/or the town council to approve the changes. A zoning permit issued by planning staff will ensure the compliance with the conditional zoning district requirements and limitations. The applicant is proposing the following restrictions. Number 1, operations designed to attract little customer or client traffic. Their office type use would be designed in that way. Number 2, majority of dollar volume not to be done with walk-in trade. Number 3, commercial activities, if any, be located within the building, and that commercial activity is more of an online sales kind of thing. Normal business operations between 7 a.m., 7 p.m., deliveries during those normal business hours only, no deliveries by tractor trailer, and long-term residential rental only, those being 28 days or greater. And then the last one, which was recommended by planning board, would be that the signage for the property be limited to 24 square feet. Go right into the site. This is the subject property here, the former location of the Church of God. This is a lot different from this photograph as it is today. As the access to the site comes up Skyline View where it's been relocated here. The yellow, all this borders the single family property, R6M across the road, and all of this is general business currently. This is another example, DOT right-of-way and property that's been acquired. The pink represents the general business, and if approved, it would just be a designation of general business on that piece of property on the zoning map, and in addition, there would be a notation of some kind that would give reference to the conditional zoning approval if it is approved. This is the site plan, and this is access coming up Skyland View Drive. This is Trillium going up the hill, and Skyland View Drive continuing on this way. Access to the site would be, and you'll see, from our photos, you'll be able to see this more clearly, but access will be through here and come into the site here. This little driveway will provide 2 additional parking spaces, and there'll be 5 total on site. Based on the office use, 3 parking spaces are required, one of them being ADA accessible, and the applicant is proposing 5 spaces. I'll go back to that site plan in a moment. This is a view of the building. They're going to add a covered entryway here on the front, and adding steps coming in from the side. They're going to remove the old chimney, and I believe they're adding a window here. And Randy Jones, the architect, can go a little more in detail if needed. They plan to paint the building white, but they reserve the right to possibly change that to something else that's consistent with our land use code. As far as stormwater, I'll go back to the other site, other plan. Based on all of what they're adding as far as parking and removing and shifting around, they're only adding really about 30 square feet of impervious surface. So we wouldn't require stormwater detention for that, but it will be directed, the stormwater leaving the site will be directed to a catch basin in this area right here to connect to the DOT roadway system. As far as landscaping, they're going to plant 2 shade trees on this bank here, and I think there's some existing plant material along there as well. And then all the other landscaping is mostly existing. The trees back on this backside between here and the adjacent property, and then out on the point here. There was a neighborhood meeting held here at Town Hall on March 26th. There were 14 members of the public that attended that meeting. Several concerns at that time that were expressed include how the deliveries would be made to the site, any manufacturing uses that might be on site, decreased property values, the open-ended nature of the proposed uses, and the additional traffic in the neighborhood. In response, the applicant reduced the list of proposed uses twice, in fact, and eventually ended up with the 3 uses: single-family, home occupations, and office. There are some comprehensive plan policies that the applicant pointed out in their submittal, and those are listed in your packet. And I believe Ms. Carter's going to expound on those during her presentation. At the Planning Board meeting on April 16th, the board recommended approval of the rezoning request from R15 to CZ General Business. And the one additional restriction recommended by Planning Board was to limit the signage to 24 square feet. I'll go through a couple more of these slides. There's the front of the building where they're going to, actually the steps do come in from the side. They're going to add a covered entry there. This is on the east side of the building where the parking lot's going to be reconfigured. Be the west side of the building, and they're going to plant some trees on this side. The rear of the building facing Trillium, some of the screening that's already available. This will be the access coming up Skyland View Drive and turning into the site here. This is the 2 other parking spaces I mentioned earlier. Skyland View Drive heading this way and Trillium going up the hill. These are the restrictions that I listed that are also included in the draft ordinance. Comprehensive plan goals that are identified and the solutions on how they're going to meet those, and they'll go over those in just a minute. So in your packet, there was a draft rezoning ordinance, site plan, architectural elevations, photos of the building and the site, which I included up here, a map of the site, The aerial photo that I had up here at the very beginning, that becomes part of the conditional use permit, conditional rezoning ordinance as an exhibit. In your packet also was a letter from Wes and Angela Carter, the summary of the 2014 comp plan policies, a letter from Nancy and Stuart Sigmund, which live on Skyland View Drive, a letter from Francis Went, and also another letter that was handed out to you tonight, and a list of the neighborhood meeting attendees from March. I will point out that the Sigmunds did attend the planning board meeting in April. They had some opposition at the beginning of the process, and that night they did not have any opposition, and they did not speak against the project or didn't speak at all during the meeting, but they did not have any opposition at that time. I'll be glad to walk you through the draft ordinance. I did check with Alan. We went through the draft ordinance, and also checked with Vaughn with Benchmark, who helped guide us through this process a little bit too, and they've had experience through conditional zoning. And at this time, be glad to answer any questions, point out anything if I need to. Be glad to.
Excuse me, where will the sign go?
They have some options. Currently, the sign is just off the screen here.
Be ground mounted?
It could be ground mounted or freestanding. They have that choice, but it would be limited to 24 square feet. Yeah, I think it was just off to the side, but they have a place they can put it anywhere that would make sense to them.
And then the sale of the property, the zoning goes with it?
Yes. Yes.
What area photo are you talking about?
The very first part,
Is me.
that becomes part of the rezoning document.
How's that gonna change when it goes 4-lane? Aren't you gonna lose that general business?
No, that property, the brick building here is still general business. This little corner, yes, that portion of that property is gone, has been purchased.
So
And
that
that's-
won't be general business? Because the road's gonna take it.
Right, the road would be, this building is gone, this is
Okay.
Francis Wentz, that's gone too. So the road is coming through here.
Right.
So this portion is gone, yes, that's right.
So basically, we're changing general business in an R15. One piece,
This one,
correct?
that's the only one.
So, how do you know how many parking places that they need if you don't know what business is going in there?
If it's office use, they only need 3 parking spaces.
No matter what the office is?
That's right.
And can you tell me what defines home occupations?
Yes. Well, maybe I can wing it. I don't have my code. I'm looking. I don't have it. Generally, only one. It's secondary to the principal use of the home. Mainly, it's a residence first, and the other part is accessory. I think 300 square feet, up to 300 square feet, can be devoted to that accessory apartment. Home occupation. 1 employee only. That doesn't live at the home. No on-site retail. No odor, fumes, noise, vibrations, those kind of things. So it's, to give you an example of one, an accountant would be a home occupation, or some kind of there's one local business where she makes cakes in her home, and she ships them out or carries them to a local place for pastries or something like that.
How about a daycare?
No.
Art studio?
Yes.
Beauty parlor?
Yes, and that was zone general business. But yes, minimal traffic, one at a time.
Probably two, the person waiting.
Yeah, depending on how long it takes. That's,
So daycare's in a different, because you could have a 5-person daycare and an in-home daycare.
5-child.
You do.
5-child.
well, you couldn't here, because
Why?
they can only do what's on here. They can do, a daycare is not home occupation. They can only do an office that's prescribed here, single family and home occupation, that's all. Unless they come back and get that changed from this board.
I want to be sure, I'm not asking this for me, I'm asking basically for Wes and his wife. Is there any way that we're going to have to come back in here, or they will have to use the term non-conforming? Would that ever apply to this, ever?
If this is rezoned,
Yes.
it's not gonna be non-conforming, but they have to meet what's in that ordinance.
Well, I want to be sure that it doesn't ever become non-conforming. I'm asking for them.
No,
Some lenders will not lend on non-conforming.
it can't be non-conforming unless they try to create it, and then we wouldn't allow it to be.
Okay, well,
We
that's
can't
fine.
establish a new non-conforming.
That is my question.
Right,
You've answered it.
okay,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Other questions?
When have we ever changed a zoning without knowing what was going in there? I don't ever remember doing that when I was on planning board. We always had somebody come to us with a business.
Well, that might have been the intent behind their rezoning application. When they got it approved, they could always say, you know what, we just ain't gonna work out, we're gonna do something else. By law, they have that right, but they still have to come back, may have to get a conditional use permit. This is different in that when we establish conditional zoning, they approach us with, this is a list of things we'd like to do here. And through the neighborhood meeting and the process, they whittled it down just to 3. They can only do those 3. They're locked in. They can't change their mind and say, well, we'd like to do something. We'd like to do a little sandwich shop up here. They can't unless they get approval and change this whole thing from planning board and council and go through the whole process.
And that is the big change in this versus the infamous dress shop
Right,
affair.
that's right.
Okay.
So are the Sigmunds happier than they were at the meeting?
They were fine at the meeting. They didn't,
Have y'all talked to them?
Yes, I can address actually all of your questions when I come up to
Okay.
speak. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, let's hear Ms. Carter.
okay. What one of y'all want to look at? I'll decide.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I will be addressing you. Wes is excusing himself for obvious reasons. He's on the planning board, and he had to sit out at the planning board as well. So good evening. I am Angela Carter, but I go by Renee. So that's how most of you may know me, but official documents, I'm Angela. And my husband is Wes, and both Wes and I are full-time Blowing Rock residents. We've owned our home here at 773 Globe Road. Yes, we're down the dirt a bit there, for about 10 years. But both Wesley and I have been visiting and vacationing in Blowing Rock since we were children. So we've always loved this town, and in fact, we were married here and honeymooned here. And so I just wanted to start with a brief background that's brought a rezoning request to tonight's meeting before the town council, just to catch up on the process, even though Kevin went over it briefly. I will just go ahead and address 2 of your questions. Even though we are not specifying a specific tenant within these conditional zoning requests that we have. The type of request that we're asking restricts who those tenants can always be. So that may help address your question, and if we need to discuss it toward the end, I'm happy to do that again. As far as our immediate neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Sigmund, we had that original meeting May 26th to the town, and we had a very, very good exchange with our neighbors, and we followed up with them. We were able to have multiple conversations, and the Sigmunds did come back to the April 16th Planning Board meeting, and they were extremely happy and appreciative that we had addressed their concerns and changed the rezoning options within the conditional use to accommodate what they were afraid might happen so that their fears were alleviated. And they were in full support at the April 16th meeting. So to begin on our journey, Wes and I purchased a little church property at 114 Skyland View in 2013 with the intent always to be good neighbors and find the best use for the building that I personally fell in love with and couldn't believe was vacant. So that's how it started. And we knew we'd have to balance the proximity to the neighborhood and the fact that it's now directly adjacent to the wide and four-lane Valley Boulevard. On the street scene, the aerial view, I think that's what Kevin called it, the two houses are completely gone that sit in front of it. And the road now comes within 16 feet of our property line where it used to be 100 feet. And so that little pink corner that's general business has now become the highway. So there is no general business there because part of the four lanes are there. And so that then would be the connector onto our property to address the aerial view. Back in 2013, we took and agreed with the town council's advice to wait until Blowing Rock's comprehensive plan had been completed before pursuing a rezoning request. That was very wise. With the completion of the comprehensive plan and its goals to guide us, along with the additional help and direction from the town, the process of rezoning led us to the conditional zoning general business, CZGB, as the right option to ensure the best use of the property as well as to be good neighbors. Free-range general business is not the best option for this site. It needs to be a transition, and it needs to honor the use of the space in the building and the neighbors that are close by. So additionally, as Kevin told you, the church property is the first to go through the conditional zoning process, and we've genuinely appreciated everyone's participation, the input, and the patience as we were all navigating the stages. The first stage of conditional zoning requires a neighborhood meeting, which did take place on March 26th, and in preparation for that meeting, we worked with our architect, Randy Jones, to create a site and building plan in order to provide a visual detail of the look and function of the property. We wanted to be sure the neighbors could see that, see something tangible that was going to be happening on the property. And our desire is to maintain the integrity of the church building and its surrounding landscape. I love all the trees that are there and the rock outcroppings, and they provide a great barrier between Mrs. Went's property and ours. None of that will disappear to protect her property and the way that she likes the appearance of that. We also wanted to make improvements that would enhance the character of the building and the use of the property. So we reviewed more than 20 possible general business type zonings to narrow down what we should put into the initial presentation to the neighbors for conditional zoning. And so that process produced 7 possible conditional zoning options that were presented to the community on March 26th. And with everyone's feedback, we then reduced it to the 2, technically 2, but 3 options. The keeping it residential, which it already is, so we're not removing that option. And with that residential, what can be considered regular home occupation, and then wanting to add the small office. We are not wanting this to be a retail storefront by any means. Very limited foot traffic and a small office. So the neighbor and community input allowed us to get to that point, and then on April 16th, with community members present and in full support of the revised conditional zoning, the planning board did unanimously recommend the acceptance of the rezoning request with the addition of one more restriction, which was the site sign should be limited to 24 square feet. If you look at the new road that comes up to our property that the DOT created, kind of like an island that we're on. There's an existing little wooden sign there. It's already put into the ground. We envision keeping that sign, making sure if it doesn't fit the 24 square feet, that it then is reduced to fit that size. And then, of course, architecturally enhanced to look a little better than it does. So tonight in your packet is the rezoning request that resulted from the neighborhood and planning board meetings. And in addition to the importance of listening to and involving the input of our neighbors, the other crucial component to the rezoning process was to ensure that the request adheres to and complements the intent of Blowing Rock's comprehensive plan. Thus, the town council has also been provided a list of comprehensive plan policies that our request specifically supports. And so at this time, if you can turn and find that where Kevin has put it together for you, I'm just going to expand on how each of those policies are actually being met through the conditional zoning request. The first policy is per section V1 of the plan. The goal states, which you have all the goals listed for you there, future development and redevelopment activity along Valley Boulevard should reflect the established character of the town. We are meeting this by repurposing the existing church building into a new use while maintaining this landmark's established architectural presence. Per section EDT-1.3 of the plan, the goal states, develop an inventory of underutilized buildings in the community that may not be suitable for retail activities, but which have sufficient parking and access to accommodate professional office uses, and work with interested parties to market their availability for this use. We are meeting this because the church building has been empty for a few years. It offers a great opportunity as a small office due to it being adjacent to the new 4-lane highway, due to it providing its own parking, which will limit the traffic and the type of small office business that can be there. The parking itself will restrict what can go into that building. And due to it having a new DOT road for access just before entering the neighborhood. So the way that the DOT created our island, all of the cars don't have to go through the neighborhood to get to that building. We are the immediate first right, and we come and go there. We don't really even impact Keith's house up there on Trillium. And Keith is our closest neighbor. He doesn't like to be political, so he wouldn't come to any of the meetings. But he really is indifferent about what we do with the building. He's a really great neighbor. We've enjoyed getting to know him better. Per section EDT-2 of the plan, the goal states strengthening local businesses. So we are meeting this by offering a highly visible location for expansion. We don't know who in town may need a new office location and they would like the visibility there on the road, or actually by bringing in a new business to the community. Maybe there's an architect that wants an office in Blowing Rock, or an additional lawyer or a CPA or someone of that nature that would like to be set up on that road, or an artist studio, or a photographer. That type of small business, as long as they have set appointments, would also work in that building. Per section LC-5 of the plan, the goal states promote compatibility between new growth and existing development with a special emphasis on ensuring the compatibility of commercial and mixed-use development with established neighborhoods. We are meeting this by offering a small business location with the 8 restrictions that provide a compatible connection with the established neighborhood. The church itself was never a residence. That building, that property, never was a home, even though it is zoned residential. So we wanted to legitimize the use of that in an office setting, but also maintain the residential option. That's really the ultimate goal with our zoning. So per section LC-5.1 of the plan, the goal states utilize zoning and use transitions between the higher intensity uses and the lower intensity uses. We are meeting this by using the existing property as the small office to transition between the general business and actually the 4-lane highway and the residential district right behind us. Per section LC-6.4 of the plan, the goal states encourage the use of the conditional zoning process to address situations where rezoning to an existing base zoning district would not be compatible with surrounding development in the absence of conditions tailored to the particular nature of the proposed use or development. We are meeting this because unrestricted general business zoning would not be appropriate for this location. But the new conditional zoning process allows us to shape this into a zoning district that will complement the neighborhood and not just have free range for anything to ever go on that property. Per section HCR-1 of the plan, the goal states, preserve and protect historical resources that contribute to Blowing Rock's unique character and sense of place. We are meeting this because the Skyland View Church building has been a notable landmark in the town of Blowing Rock for more than half a century, and our conditional zoning request utilizes the existing building. If the property were to ever change hands, they have to do this. They have to do this site plan, they have to follow the zoning, they have to follow the restrictions, or they have to come before the whole process again and present what they would want to do. So this will secure it regardless of who the owner of the property is. So I thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you may have. I do have additional information, but I do not want to drag it out.
Any other questions? Any questions?
Well, it appears you painted yourself in a pretty tight corner, and you appear knowledgeable of that.
Yes, I love the property, and I want it to remain the way that it is, but thrive. And I feel that keeping a residential option is always good. You never know down the road what might happen, but we wanted to be sure that it would go in line with the neighborhood as long-term residential. We didn't want it to become a vacation rental option there on the corner. So we're keeping what it could have always been, although it never was a residence, and we're making a small office the option because a church is no longer optional with the parking requirements. I mean, you could not hold an assembly in that building.
Speaking of that, did you get the divine permission?
No, no, but it was strange signing the deed when we bought it from the Church of God. That was kind of an intense moment there.
I will say in the past week, I have contacted a lot of the neighbors because I was curious to see how the meeting had went. And I know that there are still a few of them who are voicing to me some of their concerns. But I did not have any of them that would say that they were willing to stand against this project. Even though they did have, there's still some concerns out there with, this change.
Yes.
But, like I said, other than Miss Wentz, she's the only one that I know that was still definitely opposed to it. But the rest of them, with the restrictions that y'all had added on and the planning board had added on, were very satisfied with what had happened so far.
Yeah, and Mrs. Wentz's biggest concern, and she did send another letter where she's trying to show that some of it's been alleviated. But it's a fear of change. It's a fear that we're going to keep our word. It's a fear that what we're presenting is going to be enforced. That this isn't going to turn into the daycare that's crowding up the road or whatever else is going on in the neighborhood, which it can't. But her major concern really had been about the appearance of the building and what might happen to the trees between our properties. And the site plan helps to address that for her. And I believe the neighbors that still have, concerns about what might actually happen if it's going to be different than this, once they know that it's enforced and that this is only truly what can happen there, and over time, their fears will be alleviated.
Well, Doug, you've seen this letter. Just doesn't appear to me in opposition.
Well, it's her concerns.
Right.
She wants to be good neighbors.
Right.
Doesn't oppose.
She wants to be sure we will too. And she has every right to be sure that we will be good neighbors too. That's right.
But it's not in opposition.
No, just,
A question for Kevin. Will we be still able to keep the no outlet sign right there? That was one of the questions I had from the McDonald's, to make sure, to hope that no more, they wanted to make sure that hopefully of cutting the traffic to staying down below and not keep
Scooting up.
coming up the hill and turning around and coming back down.
I would think so, Doug. Is it just past their property?
Right.
It's right where the DOT road comes up. It used to position right there where our little tiny driveway, which becomes parking spots. It said no outlet. Yeah.
That was one of a large concern they had was, trying to make sure that they can reduce it. And I know they had talked to y'all about reducing the traffic that would be going up the hill and turning around, so.
I think so. Yes, sir.
I think you need to update your photo.
I'd love to. I don't,
We don't have a camera, we don't have a,
the aerial photo, that's provided by the state or,
County GIS.
county GIS.
we might want a new one, because it's out of date.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comments, questions from the public, since it's a public hearing? Evidently not. Close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
Motion is second, close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, vote no. Motion carries. Public hearing is closed, and we will entertain a motion for action.
I'll make a motion we approve.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Dan. Motion is second. Okay, discussion. No discussion? Then, if not, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, vote no. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
I would watch Mr. Jones, though, if I were you.
Too late.
Okay, Foggy Rock Restaurant,
Augie Rock.
minor amendment.
This is not a public hearing, and I would just present this to you. Burt Myers is requesting a minor amendment to the conditional use permit that was issued for Foggy Rock to enclose and add a shed roof to the existing deck. And these slides will show you the progression of improvements that they've made at Foggy Rock, and many of y'all have probably seen those. And these, what he's planning to do is match the recent improvements on the restaurant with the weathered oak barn siding and the metal roofing. The enclosure won't require any additional parking because it's the same, based on the number of seats they had outside and the enclosure size, the requirement, they're the same. Our ordinance allows a minor design modification to be approved by council without a formal application or public hearing. And the proposed deck enclosure meets this section of the ordinance and has no substantial impact on neighboring properties or the general public. So this is before, and they're wanting to put the enclosed deck here. Some of the other before photos. And then after, some of the improvements that Burt has completed with the metal roofing on top that they asked for request approval last fall. It's just done a great job up there. Really good work. So they want to continue that on this portion of the building. That, when I had this taken, they've taken all that siding off and want to enclose that. This is a rendering that Burt proposed to me. This is with the gray siding, and as I understood, I misunderstood Burt. I thought this is what their first choice is to replace it and match up. In fact, I got this as an option, and I thought this was just an option. Burt brought to me some panels, or Damon, his contractor, brought some panels to put one of these examples here on just that portion, and everything else would stay the same with the gray. So, Bert, I think that's what you want to do.
Yeah, just on those, the rest of it will be gray, just to let it stand out a little bit. It's a faded red, it's not like a,
Yeah.
that's probably a little darker.
Well, that's,
Yeah, it's the same.
that's
color.
what you have.
Yeah.
And it's going one of these. Just kind of subtle, so I misunderstood, that's why I added this at the end, was not in your original packet. So, that to go on this portion right here, to enclose that, improve the looks of that side of the building. Okay, Bart, you got any comments, share? You have any other comments?
No, the main reason we want to do it is so we can use it year round and for when it rains.
How many chairs out there?
12, 3 tables of 4.
That's right.
And you also have outdoor seating at the pet patio. Is that gone or is that there?
Are you talking about right there? Oh,
The other side.
The other side, there's two tables, 3 top and a 2 top right there.
So doesn't that change the parking requirement they need?
This would.
What's there?
Yeah, they were there, when we went, it was under construction, this portion, so, if they wanna add these, they would need to add,
How many is it gonna have to add? And
probably 2. I mean, what do you got, 2 tables there?
Yeah.
Is there one here?
No, that's it. That's the size of it.
Probably 2. What he's done out there is put his employee parking in the front or on the side, and you can park in behind that.
so he's gonna need 35 instead of 33? Is that what it is now?
If he's got 33. The building did not change, going back when, I don't know how many restaurants it's been, but the size did not change. So the parking, when they reconfigured it about 2 restaurants ago, on the top and on the lower section, I have to look to see if they added any parking. And another part of the process is they've removed the old building that was in behind, and they've gone back and grassed that area over to, because they've added some gravel around the back to access the other parking. So the impervious and the pervious has not really changed because they took down the old house. So if he's wanting to keep this, we would need to add 2 additional spaces.
Do you have enough space for 35? Because that's what he's saying.
Yeah, I would think so. And most of the time that's used for waiting area anyway, while people are waiting to go in and eat. And, you know, there's more tables on the inside where people are just sitting and waiting.
Right, right. Well, I think that needs to be a condition if he's gonna do 12 and up top
Okay.
to follow the ordinance.
All right.
Okay?
Does it have to be paid for parking?
I don't
No.
think so.
No.
And we're saying that because of those 2 tables, he needs 2 more parking places? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Because it's 6 people, right? It's
1 for every 4.
One for every 4.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're designated for people to wait, I don't know that would require parking.
If he's just got chairs out there, no table, that's just waiting area. But once you add the tables with the chairs combined, it's dining.
Well, can that be Bert's option, whether he wants to have tables out there or not?
That could be his option. If it's good for his business, he can add 2 parking spaces. Well, we can find a way to
Make it work.
get a place for him.
Well, there's 2 right there where that cardboard dumpster used to sit.
make sure that whatever he adds meets
Let's
maneuverability.
let them work that out.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move we accept the minor amendment.
I second it.
Discussion? Not all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. Motion carries. Good luck, Bert. Okay, bid award and appropriation for stormwater repair at intersection of Sunset and Cornish.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. They're back in the fall. Staff identified several culverts that had some failing issues at the intersection of Cornish and Sunset. And we had got permits to replace those and actually extend the culverts, because the culverts just are only about 2 feet from the edge of the road. So there's not much room there. So we got permits to extend those culverts. After the permits were received, we solicited informal bids. The low bidder was M&M Construction of Banner Elk with a price of $21,625. In looking at that and some issues farther down the street towards 321, we noticed in looking at trying to address those issues where the creek is washing close to the road, we looked just downstream of the culvert, and over the winter, there's been some washing where the stream runs very close to the road near this intersection. You'll see that in the second photo, where actually in the last several weeks or month, the section of pavement has failed. So since that area there's a stream there, it's an active stream, we'll have to get a permit to do some work in that area, and we're in the process of modifying the permit for this intersection culvert to include this work. We would propose keeping the repairs of that stream as part of this project, something we could negotiate with M&M Construction to handle in the field, and recommend award to M&M for that, for this project.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Doug?
You have to talk to Corps of Engineers, is that who you have to talk to?
Yes.
And I will be sure that this is going to include the property on Mallory Mulhern.
Is that farther down the stream? That will be a separate effort because of permitting time and schedules and wanting to get the road fixed up here. We'll handle that as a separate permit, and that'll come back to you at a later time. But we have looked at that area, and we've got a game plan together for what needs to be done there.
What kind of time frame? I know I'm going to get asked, so I want to know.
I'm trying to remember what your response was in that email. I suspect that we're probably talking about 6 to 8 weeks to get approval to do what we want to do.
But it will be done. Okay. Because
Yes.
the road's getting ready to go down in there.
Yeah, it's close to, the stream's washed close to the road.
Okay.
Your motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. Motion carries. Thank you, Doug. Okay, presentation of the recommended budget for fiscal year 2016. Mr. Folkman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Happy to be here tonight. Submitted herein, in accordance with the Local Government Budget Fiscal and Control Act, is the recommended budget for FY16 for the town of Blowing Rock. The grand total of this year's recommended budget is $13,615,372. The purpose of tonight's presentation is merely to present it officially, make it a public document that is available for review. No decisions are necessary tonight as it's for the first time being officially presented. We do have 3 separate work sessions already planned for next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, beginning at 6 o'clock each evening here in the Town Council chambers. We do have a public hearing planned for the June 9th council meeting, and then council is scheduled to consider adoption of the recommended budget along with a list of any changes agreed upon by council at the June 9th council meeting. And our fiscal year 2016 begins July 1, 2015, and runs through June 30 of 2016. So what I'd like to do tonight is lay out a picture of the economic environment, show you some of the population changes, how inflation has compared to our expenditure changes over the years, and look at some of the primary revenue growth drivers that are driving and creating the context in which we need to plan our upcoming financial budgetary ideas. We'll look at the overall budget totals. And one of the key drivers that will be an item for council discussion during this budget year and for budget years to come is the pace at which we choose to move forward in execution of the general obligation bond referenda that was approved by the voters November 4th, 2014. We'll look at the recommended tax rate and fees given the first phase that's being recommended of those general obligation projects. Our pipeline of revenue is largely based on assessed value. So one of the leading indicators of that is that activity that has been permitted, ready for new construction in the town of Blowing Rock. So this is looking back to 1995 when we had a little over $5 million permitted. It raised up to around a little over 15 in the late 90s and then had a dip there with the mild recession in the early 2000s. Then became a little bit stronger with a peak in 2008, and with the very much stronger recession, dipped quite significantly and rebounded a good bit in FY13. However, about 17 million of that was for the Appalachian Regional Healthcare System post-acute care facility, which as permitted will not be a taxable property. However, in 2014, just over $20 million was permitted. So as we go forward in time, this will help add to our tax base. In Blowing Rock, some of the homes go up a little bit quicker than others. This particular picture was taken about this time last year and transition 1 year forward. That was taken today. It's still under construction. So the value that we are able to apply the tax rate to is whatever value is on the ground as of January 1 of, in this case, January 1, 2015. That forms our tax base for our upcoming fiscal year. Hopefully this home will likely be done in this calendar year. So if it's completed by January 1, 2016, it will form our tax base for FY17 at its full value. So all of that construction goes on and it creates our tax base that we're actually able to apply a tax rate to. You can see from this graph, we've been holding fairly steady at just over $1 billion. So to understand the impact for us, looking at the percentage change gives you an idea of where the major changes have been, and typically you look to the revaluation years. That's when the county reassesses all the value in the county and they try to bring it to market value. So that's the reason for the very large spike back in the FY 2003 property revaluation. Our tax base increased a significant portion, almost a 100% increase. So how you adjust for that is the revenue neutral tax rate, and we had that again this past year. But if you look at the last, since FY 2008, we've had average annual growth of about 1.5%. Last year when the revaluation hit, however, ultimately our property values dropped 4.5%, and that's part of the reason we ended up raising the tax rate to generate at least the same amount of income in last year's budget. This is not a revaluation year, so we don't have that particular issue to deal with. So last year it went down. This year it went up 1.2%, so just under our previous 8-year average. So you like to see black bars, but that level of revenue growth is something we look at and factor into our upcoming budget forecast. The value of 1 penny on the tax rate. So as we look at and think about particularly executing the general obligation bond referenda, it helps to keep in mind how much revenue is generated by 1 penny on the tax rate. And because our tax base has not changed significantly over the past 15 years, our value of 1 penny on the tax rate has not changed substantially either. Another key revenue driver for us is our population. Lots of communities have experienced significant population growth. Obviously, our population has not changed much over the years. This is our kind of steady base. The majority of Blowing Rock is in Watauga County, and you add the small portion that is in Caldwell County. In fact, that number back in '91 was about 44 people, and it just peaked over about 108 this past year. So percentage-wise, our Caldwell population is growing at a much greater rate than the Watauga County portion. So if you look back at 1991, our certified population, upon which state-collected local revenues are distributed by the size of the pie, driven by our population relative to others in the state, we had 1,267 people officially recognized by the state. 2015, 1,285. You can see the dip there in FY 2012. That's as a result of the recalibration done when the 2010 census took effect. Numbers came up differently, and the pie was reallocated accordingly. That's less than 1 person growth per year related to our state collected local revenues. So that's a factor that is keeping down our growth relative to other communities in Watauga County and particularly across the state, especially the urban areas. So understanding inflation and its impact on us, comparing back to 1996 compared to FY14, our actual spending dollars in the general fund, which is our primary fund for operations, has more than doubled. Of course, inflation, or the consumer price index, has not remained steady. It has gone steadily upward. So when you apply the impact of inflation to that, our actual spending power has not quite kept up with inflation. So as we look at our real value that we're getting for each dollar that we're investing in the community, we've lost pace over the last 10 years. So in terms of thinking forward, a big effort that we took on last year was really assessing our community's infrastructure, looking at 4 major capital categories, how we build Blowing Rock for the future and how we take care of the investments of the past. So we put together 4 questions on the bond referendum for voters to weigh in on. $9 million for transportation, $1 million for parks and recreation, $2 million for water lines, and $1 million for sewer. We put together a lot of information on the bonds, all of which is still available on our website and will be linked to from the news release that we're putting out tonight, sharing the budget information. So to summarize, here are our bond amounts, the total of $13 million. The Caldwell vote, 112 yes, 26 no, pretty steady across the 4 bond questions. Watauga County, 1,974 yeses, 602 no's. So our total, 2,086 yeses, 628 no's. So an average of about 77% favorable vote, yes, move forward with these important infrastructure advances. So moving forward, the pace at which we determine we're ready to take on these projects is a key budget driver that we'll want to talk a lot about. And that's part of the reason that you see in this recommended budget, the capital project categories, the growth in our budget is being driven by taking on the first phase of those capital projects. The public facilities category, however, is actually going down in this recommended budget compared to council's adopted budget last year. And that's predominantly because last year's number included the Public Works Facility Renovation Project. So we don't have that particular project this year, so that number comes down. But all the other categories, Parks and Rec, roads and sidewalks, water, and sewer, see significant growth because we have that bond referendum authority available, ready to invest in the community. So this is one of many options as a way to begin executing that program. Our operating budget totals $8.6 million, and we do have some growth there, about $741,000. We have identified 3 positions, 2 in the utility fund, 1 in the general fund to help keep up with the service demands that we have. And we're also bringing on debt service associated with serving that general obligation bond debt as well as the Public Works Facility renovation project. Looking at our operating budget a little bit different way, there you see the personnel costs increasing, a little bit of dip in our capital outlay and transfers because we have that bond referendum authority available, and you see our net debt service beginning to go up. So our key recommendations from the budget this year include to begin implementing the general obligation bond referendum project for all 4 project categories. Associated with that, we need to increase revenues to begin to pay that debt service. We're recommending a 3 cents tax increase, which would take it from 31 cents today to 34 cents per $100 of taxable value. This equals an annual increase of $150 per year for an example home valued at $500,000. So that's effectively $30 for each $100,000 of taxable value associated with a 3 cents tax increase. We also have water and sewer debt that we would be bringing on associated with this first phase of implementation. And associated with that, we would be recommending a 5% base rate increase, which would take our base for both water and sewer from $39 to $41, as well as an increase in the per 1,000 gallon rate for gallons consumed over 5,000 up a quarter to $5.25. When looking at our property tax rate, it's always helpful to understand where we are relative to others, and there are lots of different ways to look at this. It's not suggesting that the service level is the same in any community. It's just one of many different parameters to evaluate as we look across the board. Beach Mountain, so this is through the FY 2015 adopted tax rate. Beach Mountain actually increased their tax rate for this fiscal year. They're currently at 73 cents per $100 valuation. Seven Devils remains steady. They're at 51 cents. Boone increased their tax rate to 41 cents, and we increased ours to 31 cents, and we're recommending 3 cents this year. We don't know yet what the other communities are anticipating as they are just entering their official budget processes as well. Immediately following the council meeting tonight, we'll be sending out a news release which summarizes this same information. It provides a link to the full document of the recommended budget, which has the detail of all of the projects, all of the line items by all accounts for all of our departments, and we'll be going through that detail to the satisfaction of council's inquiries and questions as we go through the work sessions next week, so that we understand all of the parameters associated with that. So Mayor and Council, that completes our introduction of the fiscal year 2016 recommended budget this year. I would like to take a moment to thank our department director team. This is a long process. They put a lot of work into providing thought about value that they bring to the table for the requests that they make. I do believe that every request that comes through would be a high value for the community, but it's just weighing one thing against another, so that's part of pulling it all together. In particular, I would like to thank our finance officer, Nicole Norman. She is an invaluable resource and helps a tremendous amount, not only on a daily basis, but in preparation of this budget. So thank you, Mayor and the Council.
Thank you, Scott. Good job. Our work sessions are open to the public, aren't they?
Yes.
If anybody wants to attend our budget sessions, you're welcome to be here next week, 6 o'clock. Bring your questions, suggestions. We'd be glad to listen. Thank you, Scott. Any questions of Scott for this? Yeah. We've got signature on the floor. Just hang on a second till Albert gets back. I think that'd be quicker than taking a break. The last item on the agenda is speakers from the floor. We have Mr. Lee Dunston, who wants to talk about the Highway 321 project.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Town Manager Fogelman, and members of the council. My name is Lee Dunston. I'm a permanent resident of the town. I've been here since 2002, and I am a full-time teacher down at the business school at the university at ASU. And I'm here tonight to ask you to do something. I'm not sure I'm right about this, but I sense that you may not want to do what I'm going to request you do. And I'm very much open to any dialogue that you would like to have with me or with that pretty lady, that redheaded lady back there is my wife, Pamela. I'd like you to become very proactive with the Department of Transportation on making sure that this, I use this word advisedly, scandalous, overdue project gets completed. You know, I heard Mr. Turner here tonight, and I understand very well what Mr. Turner was doing. He was doing his job. And he's good at his job. He understands this project. He understands all the nits and gnats of this project. And if you listen every month to the nits and gnats of this project, you may, I'm not saying you do, you may lose the impact of what is really happening here. The impact of what is really happening is that this has now gone on for over 4 years. It probably will go on for 6 years. And we need to look at some basic facts. We talked about things under the, widening in sewer lines and all that. I get it. I used to represent Basilio and Grogan in Florida. So I understand what he was talking about. But the overview of this project is that it has become a scandal. We live essentially on a moonscape here. This town is interminably ugly through its center. Ugly. Has been and continues to be, and as far as I can tell, will be for at least 2 more, maybe 3 more years. It is a scandal. We need you, our elected representatives, to deal with the DOT in an oppositional way rather than a totally cooperative way. I understand cooperation with the DOT. The DOT is essential to our well-being, but it has come time for you to be oppositional to the DOT. Some facts. This is a 2-mile project from Green Park to Tanger. Precisely 2 miles. 2 miles. The topography on this project is essentially straightaways. You have the double or triple S curve at canyons. We all understand that. But we're talking about straightaway to the curve, and then after the curves at canyons that end just before the old Broyhill Furniture Store, another long, long straightaway. And then you have the issue of the rock face at Cliff Dwellers, which is a major issue. No one can deny that. But this is being treated by the DOT as if it were the big dig in Boston. The idea that this could be a 5 or 6 year project or 7-year project is truly a scandal. So the question is not seems to me not whether we cry over spilled milk or whether we get angry with our elected representatives. I'm not here to be angry with you or to chide you. I'm here to encourage you to become proactive and, if necessary, oppositional in the face of the DOT, all the way to the city of Raleigh. I sat in a meeting last year when Mr. Tata was here, the Secretary of Transportation. He promised that our road would be through this town by this spring. Now we're being told tonight that maybe 2016, and my wife has spoken with the DOT representative, Clarice Cheek, who says probably not until 2017. That's a scandal. That is a scandal. And our elected representatives simply cannot sit still while we are the victims of a scandal. Now, the question is, what can they do? Well, I can think of some things. They cost money. Overtime. Overtime is one thing. Work at night is another thing. Work on the weekends, if they're not a holiday weekend, is another thing. And I heard one of the council members, it may have been Mr. Yon, or it may have been Mr. Phillips, ask a question of Mr. Turner, you know, who has the job? Listen, every single general contractor that has ever signed a contract with any Department of Transportation has an affirmative duty to coordinate the work. That's their obligation. That's what they're being paid $6 or $7 or $8 million to do. It is absolutely no excuse that I can't get Comcast here, or I can't get the subcontractor to do this or to do that. It's absolutely no excuse. It is their affirmative contractual obligation. I have asked for a copy of the contract from the Department of I have asked Mr. Fogelman to ask Mr. Mosley to get a copy of the contract and the change orders so we can examine, so you can examine, so Mr. Mosley can examine the basis upon which these extensions have been granted. There can be, listen, overview, get up 10,000 feet, get up 20 feet. There can be no excuse for this project going on this long. None. So if you were to look at the contract and the change orders, I think there would be lots of good factual information upon which we could all go to Raleigh and insist that the Department of Transportation get this job concluded so that our town is not ugly. So that actually, I spoke with a merchant today who told me his receipts are down 30 to 35%. This is damaging our town not only on a temporary basis, this is damaging our town on a permanent basis. If you routinely bring your children to ASU or you routinely come to Blowing Rock, to the mountains, to the Blue Ridge Parkway, to beautiful Blowing Rock, the impression you have after all this time is that Blowing Rock is ugly. It is a moonscape. I appreciate all you do. You are in the arena. You offer yourselves up to be elected. That takes guts. I appreciate that. We need you to get to work on this. This is essential. We live in an ugly town now that needs to be fixed. You can help. You can be the spearhead for this. You must do this. I'm anxious to have a dialogue with anybody that wants to talk about it. Can there be any excuse for what has happened here?
I agree with you, Lee. Thank you. I couldn't agree more.
We feel you, man.
We need you to do something proactive. I will offer my time and whatever little talent I can bring to the table. I will chauffeur you down to Raleigh personally. We need to meet with Mr. Tata. We need to meet with the governor. This has got to stop. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, meeting's adjourned. Have a good evening. Thank you. See you Monday.
We're going to Dan and be sure.
Yeah. Can you just get a bigger